This podcast deals with themes, languages, and situations that may not be suitable for young audiences. If you're under the age of 18, parental guidance isn't going to help you here. Welcome to Now Open the Podcast, the sex education podcast that's more sex than education. I'm Trisha.
I am Jobim.
And I'm Fresh.
Hello, good evening. And you might notice something a little bit different about the show tonight. Don't know what that is, can't put my finger on it, but tonight's episode is about the sometimes unbelievable, mostly inconceivable herstory of drag. But before we get into that, here's the newsstand.
So, lesbians from Ampatuan, Maguindanao last week were forcibly shaved by other residents who claim being a member of the LGBT plus community goes against Islamic teachings. The Commission on Human Rights will hold a discussion with the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao on the issue. So, very short, high-level overview of what's happening, but basically, these lesbian women were forcibly shaved, their hair removed by other people because they are lesbians. And the fact that this is happening in 2021 is almost, as you said, unbelievable, mostly inconceivable. But it also, I guess, just really reminds you about how progress isn't uniform across the country.
That's right.
And there's still a whole way to go.
This is going on just in our backyard. We're doing this podcast in Luzon, and this is happening in Mindanao. So that's crazy. The Commission on Human Rights will hold a discussion with Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao on the issue. And that was the newsstand.
So this just happened last week. So hopefully stay tuned for updates on how this develops.
That was the newsstand. Now sitting down.
So if you're listening live and like what you hear, you can join in on the discussion by leaving a comment below. And if we have time, we'll get to them as the show goes on. And outside of lovely podcast hours, opening hours, you can also join in on the conversation on the Now Open PH Discord server, where you'll be able to talk about anything and everything sexuality with like-minded people, respectfully, of course. You can find the link to the server in the episode description, and I'm leaving it in the comments below. So, Jobim, would you like to introduce our guests for this evening?
All right. So we are joined tonight by non-binary drag superstar and Space Manila Spotlight Season 1 winner, Mick Chanel.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you so much for joining us. I now immediately regret even attempting to dress up for tonight's episode. Please turn her camera off now. I just want to hear her voice for the rest of this episode. No, this will not.
No, we'll turn your camera off.
I'm sorry, but in this showdown,
she looks so good.
Won. They totally won.
Oh, man. We will later be joined by drag queen diva extraordinaire, impersonator, hostess, and all-around gorgeous woman, DeeDee Marie Holliday. But before we start, okay, I just want to get this out of the way before anybody rolling their eyes at the gendering of the word history. We are aware that the word is not gendered, and that if it were, the Greek historia from which it is derived is already feminine in both Greek and Latin. However, language is arbitrary and changes to reflect the times. And since you're all perfectly fine casually using the nonsensical word workaholic 7 days a week, I'm sure that you can forgive a little flamboyance with grammar and language fluidity. On with the show. Okay, so the herstory of drag. I've often heard people talk about cross-dressing as drag throughout the centuries, and I'm not sure that those are the same thing. In fact, I would go so far as to argue that cross-dressing is not drag. Drag is a kind of cross-dressing. It is an offshoot of that. Cross-dressing has been around for almost as long as literature has been around. We find them in theater traditions all around the world. in ancient Norse mythology and Eastern epic poems. In fact, most of the earliest cross-dressers in history were badass women trying to live fuller lives that were only afforded to men in patriarchal societies. How wild is that? A proud tradition, to be sure, but this is not drag as we know it.
I
The
think it's
first,
a really good point that you bring up because, like, even the word trans right now, that word, even as recent as I guess Stonewall, if you can still call that recent, it's in the last 50-ish years or so. A lot of them would still go by like I'm a woman, but they didn't really have the word trans. It was just
right,
people still viewed them as men dressing up as women, as cross dressers. And in fact, the Stonewall riots were a part of a raid against cross dressing.
right.
Yeah,
They were
Um,
actually,
patting these people down.
yeah. To that point, actually, it's still it's still somewhat disputed of Marsha P. Johnson's true nature per se. So Marsha P. Johnson is the first person who threw a brick at the
right.
police at back in Stonewall, and some sources say that Marsha P. Johnson identified as a drag queen, and some sources say also that she identified as a woman, making her a trans woman.
Right.
So it's actually because
That's
I think at that
actually
time it wasn't very clear. We did not have as many, labels. We did not have as particular of a language at that time. So it's a little bit disputed right now what her true identity is, what she really identified as. But what I think is important with Marsha P. Johnson as an icon is that she is someone who embraced femininity.
that is true. In fact, it's not just Marsha P. Johnson who's who we're not quite, we can't really say. It was just Sylvia Rivera also and Marsha P. Johnson. I had read several accounts where some people said that they had identified as drag queens, and there were other arguments saying that had they been around today with the terminology and everything, that they would identify as trans. But there's no real way of us knowing. Where was I? Okay, the first drag queen, the person who started it all. Okay, and the reason that I say that drag is separate from cross-dressing, the evidence to support that is that the first drag queen, the first person to call themselves a drag queen, was William Dorsey Swan, a gay black man who was born into slavery. So how wild is it that the person who brought drag into the modern era is literally a black swan? Swan's family gained their freedom when he was around 5 years old, and his family was able to buy a farm after the Civil War. In the 1880s and 1890s, calling himself the Queen of Drag, Swan would hold balls that were mostly attended by freed slaves. These events were as secret as rebel meetings during wartime, and invitations were placed in YMCAs so attendees could come to dress up in the fineries that were previously out of reach for them. Satins, pearls, the trappings of glamour and riches, a dream that up until that point had been out of their reach. The inception of drag was already steeped in a culture trying to find its foothold in a country that didn't want it there, while celebrating their charisma, uniqueness, nerve, and talent. Let's see. I
I have a
had
question.
yes.
Where does the term drag come from?
Okay, I'm glad you asked that. That's the thing that I was thinking about and forgot. The actual term drag, people think that it came from the British theater in the late 1800s, so the late 19th century. And this was because in the theater, they were so like scared of women being there that even men had to play the female roles. There's also a tradition of people doing this in Japan with kabukis, right? But women couldn't play women roles, and a lot of the earliest allies were these actors, were these men who were going about at the time it was called female impersonation, and they would go around promoting women's rights. They'd go around promoting suffrage. They'd go around empowering women. Some of our earliest allies were, at the time, female impersonators. Now, the petticoats that these actors would wear would drag on the ground because they were longer than what men were wearing at the time, and therefore the petticoats would be referred to as drags. So to put on female clothes would be to get your drag on, literally to get your drag on. So I think that's where the etymology, if I'm not mistaken, of drag comes from. Nix, do you have something to add to that?
There's another kind of like a disputed
Mhm.
meaning for drag, which is as an acronym. So dressing up as girls. So dressed as
Ooh.
girls, drag. That's another one of the etymologies being given, but neither there's no clear consensus as to which one is more agreed with.
All right, thanks for that. I did not know that. Um, so where were we? Swan was a pioneer in the truest sense of the word. He faced persecution from the police, being arrested in raids several times, and was the first person to be charged with female impersonation in the U.S. on April 12, 1888. In 1896, he was wrongfully imprisoned for 10 months for keeping a disorderly house, or old-timey speak for running a brothel in your home, running a whorehouse, basically, which speaks to the stigmatization of non-binary people as immoral deviants. Just because they would gather at a house, it was, they get taken down as a brothel, because to them, what other reason could a bunch of men have to get together to dress up as women? By requesting a pardon from President Grover Cleveland, the sheer balls on this dude, okay? Not only does he get arrested for something that, excuse me, nobody else has ever gotten arrested for, he writes a letter to the president asking for a pardon just because he understood that his worth as a person was more than this. Swan became the very first American on record who pursued legal and political action to defend the LGBTQ community rights to gather. So
I think we have to really just give a moment to all the Black queer folks who paved the way for the rest of us.
Mhm.
This man escaped slavery, managed to crawl his way out of slavery and into, freedom, and became a drag queen to fight for a completely, like, another community.
Mhm.
It's just, we owe so much to Black drag queens, really.
Swan,
To that, if you guys are familiar with, there's a new version of the pride flag going around, which is called the progress flag, and it comes with the triangle section of white, baby blue, pink, brown, and black, as sort of a remembrance for all the Black, Indigenous people of color, and trans women that have fought for the gay community, which, as you've shown, Swan and Marsha P. Johnson, they've all been people of color. They've all been non-binary or trans or queer identifying people that have been at the forefront of fighting for our rights. So I think that's actually a very important. That's been a very important change to the flag that we know today.
Yeah, I have another question.
Mhm.
Why do you feel like it's mostly Black people who are fighting for these rights? I'm sure that there are other, trans people who are white, but
Yeah.
why do we see in history, or her story
I'm
rather?
really glad you asked that.
There we go.
It's primarily, I think, and I can't speak for them, but what the impression that I get is because struggle is a part of their identity. Struggle, they face adversity. Remember that one documentary that we watched where this one Black kid said, "My dad said that there are 3 strikes in this world for every man."
Paris is burning,
Yeah, Paris is burning, and you are born with 2. You are Black and you are a man, and you're going to throw gay in there. You're going to have a hard life. And the reason that they fight is because they've been fighting their whole lives. That's all they know. And they won't be satisfied until they see the equality that they see for everybody else. How do you not fight?
I think you can also point to like a little bit of pre-Stonewall history where there were white gays who were trying to gain acceptance, but they were doing so via assimilation, aka, trying to appear as respectable as possible. Like, we're not like the deviant gays. We're not the drug using gays. We're not the hippie communist gays. We're just regular middle class white gays. We're just like you. So they were appealing to other sectors.
I think to Trisha's point, they used their privilege as white people to gain acceptance easier than people of color.
Yeah.
So people of color had to fight more. Okay, cool. Moving on. Drag in the city. By the time Swan passed away in 1925, drag had spread to the inner cities. Drag clubs were now a prominent, if elusive, part of city life. At this time, dancing between same-sex couples was illegal, so gay men would dress up in women's clothing in order to dance with whoever the fuck they wanted, thus granting a generation of young gay men a space to live their truths without being judged, but not without risk, because they still were being persecuted at the time. So when you hear in old-timey movies about, oh, the dangers of the city, don't go to Sodom and Gomorrah, this is what they were talking about. They were talking about, the city was modernizing, and, young, hip urbanites were getting together in gay clubs, and gay clubs were becoming a real thing. However, it would take another 20 years for drag to gain acceptance as entertainment, as the community was starting to get too loud for society at large to continue to ignore. In the 50s, drag balls, which, we talked about, these were started in the early 19th century, right? By the 1950s, they were more commonplace than ever. And judging from the old footage, were wild even by today's standards. I found footage from old drag balls in the 50s, and these people were like drunk all over the place. It was an orgy, right? It was crazy. Drag clubs were not only present but popular, like the Black Cat Cafe in San Francisco, were legendary drag queens like Jose Julio Saria, who went by Absolute Empress the First de San Francisco, and the Widow Norton made a name for themselves. Saria was a World War II veteran, a true badass, who in 1961 became the first openly gay candidate to run for public office in the US, and is the founder of the International Imperial Court System, one of the oldest and largest LGBT organizations today.
In 1961, ran for office.
Mm-hmm.
The balls on these people. Like, it's the people who are operating today still very brave because there's still a lot of shit going on. There's a lot of discrimination, still a lot of violence. Like, our newsstand today was just about lesbians having their heads shaved. This is still a reality. But of course, we have to acknowledge that it is much better today overall as a internationally.
What is important about Empress the First de San Francisco was that out of drag, he was a World War II veteran. I don't know how to emphasize what that meant in America at that time, but for a World War II veteran who society viewed as the strongest, manliest men on the face of the planet, to live as an openly gay man and fight for their rights was, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. It was such a big deal. It was such a brave thing to do.
Don't Ask, Don't Tell was just repealed within our lifetime in the last 10 years. I'm very bad with dates. But this was an openly gay man in 1960. Jesus. Props.
Yeah. Okay, so now we find ourselves in the Stonewall riots, right? Something that we had addressed earlier. In 1969, so we talked about how Marsha P. Johnson was the first person to throw a brick. Everybody knows the name Marsha P. Johnson. And I think we've talked about this in a previous episode. I'm not sure which one. It was a butch drag queen named Stormy DeLarverie. I hope I'm saying that right. Stormy. There's supposed to be a dash above that E. So Stormy DeLarverie, who threw the first punch at Stonewall and helped incite the now famous riots. The first person to make skin-on-skin contact, say hello to my fist, was a butch drag king. Black and Latinx drag queens Sylvia Rivera and Marsha P. Johnson were, of course, instrumental in leading the charge in the LGBT rights movement. We've all seen the footage, the dramatic footage of them screaming at crowds, arguing for equal rights, and it's hard not to be moved. Drag and disco. Now, the 70s, the 70s were arguably the best decade for drag yet, with the reverberations of the recent Stonewall riots continuing to shake the foundations of modern entertainment. Of course, this was also after the sexual revolution of the 60s, so people were all about sex, drugs, and experimentation. The public consciousness was more receptive and open than ever to what was previously deemed deviant lifestyles, right? So people were starting to reevaluate their values at this time, and it really let drag flourish in the 70s. Iconic drag superstar Divine was featured in John Waters' now famous exploitation comedy Pink Flamingos.
Which you still need to watch,
yes,
Joe. It is absolutely excellent. The character of Ursula, her design was
I've seen Little Mermaid like a billion times. Does that even things out?
But it's so different. But divine in all her glory. At least Hairspray. Come on.
I will. I will. It's on my bucket list. Um, You Make Me Feel Mighty Real was released by gay artist Sylvester with a music video featuring him in full, resplendent drag in 1978. Since then, the song has been listed as one of Pitchfork's 50 songs that define the last 50 years of LGBTQ plus pride and preserved by the Library of Congress for being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. It was also at this time that legend Crystal LaBeija would
La
found
Beja.
La Beja. Sorry, I keep on getting that wrong because we watched it last night and I was like, La Beja?
It's La Beja.
LaBeija, yeah. Crystal LaBeija would found the House of LaBeija in 1977, thus introducing the house system to the world of drag. Prior to that, there was no house system, and we'll get to why the house system in drag is so important in just a bit. Drag visibility was no longer limited to drag balls, and it was starting to become a fixture of society. Drag was no longer a thing that you could easily avoid if you just stayed away from certain places. It was becoming commonplace. The 80s, ball culture, and voguing. Now, the 80s and 90s saw the incorporation of drag into popular culture thanks to the New York balls, the documentary Paris is Burning, and of course, Madonna. And
Madonna.
yeah, do you guys have anything to say about Madonna? Madonna's impact
Icon.
on the drag community? Good thing, bad thing, thoughts, violent reactions?
I think, especially if you watched the second season of Pose, and a lot of other ball culture, New York ball culture specifically, ball culture related documentaries, they kind of dismiss Madonna as, having capitalized or, stolen from queer culture. But I think it's a disservice to ignore her being an advocate at that time where nobody else was doing it. That was, or very few people were. Very few people were actually. Very few celebrities, very few public figures were advocating for LGBT rights as much as she was at that time. So, I mean, yeah, I do get their sentiment that voguing at that time, it became a trend. She took something from, Black, Indigenous, people of color culture, queer culture, took it into mainstream, made money off of it, and then kind of just, it went and passed. But I think as a person, Madonna really was a really good advocate for the community at that time.
Like, you think about the context where 80s, this was like AIDS, right? So
Oh my God.
be associating yourself with the LGBTQ community was like associating yourself with a witch. It was
Yes.
that kind of level at the time.
If you want to get how brave,
it's called the plague.
yeah.
That, was a
It wouldn't go
punishment
near
for
you.
gay people.
If you want to know how brave Madonna was, remember this was a time when Michael Jackson wouldn't even associate with being black. So for Madonna to be openly like, yeah, this is my peeps, it's very, very brave.
Exactly.
Okay.
And she was like the pop star at the time,
Yes.
She paved the way for Britney and all of our little pop girls that we have today. They all owe it to Madonna. She was a force. Imagine if it's basically like what we see today with like Lady Gaga.
Yes.
Who else is like super queer and like out about it? But yeah, you have your pop girls, but Madonna was the first in the 80s at the time of AIDS. We cannot stress enough how different that time was from today.
Right.
Madonna was doing something, and also she made out with a black Jesus in that one music video,
Or just
which
Jesus.
was also no, but like
Jesus
it was
is
like
black.
it was exactly, but this was the 80s, right? And
Right.
all of your pictures of Jesus are blonde, blue-eyed, and
Right.
Caucasian as shit.
Right.
But Madonna came here and was making out with a black Jesus in that music video for Like a Prayer, and that was so revolutionary as well. So she's an icon.
Her biggest rival is Elton John. So what's that about? Anyway, whatever. So the 80s and 90s is also what saw drag houses emerge as surrogate families. And we talked about a little about drag houses earlier and YMCAs. And something that I didn't know before this episode was that the YMCA, although it is a foreign entity, I think it's from Switzerland or something. If in case you didn't know, YMCA I think stands for Young Men's
Christian.
Yeah.
Yeah. Young Men's Christian
Association.
Academy or something.
Academy. So, anyway,
Yeah.
it's a
It was
They're basically
basically an all boys Christian school.
right. and they basically accept anybody off the streets. It's a free dorm for anyone, for dudes, for young men, right? And because so many young men were getting kicked out of their homes because they were gay, the place that a lot of them would turn to, the place where Swan would advertise his first balls, was the YMCA. And this became a gathering place for so many young and lost people who were kicked out by their families, man. And that's why the YMCA song was so big. Well, because if you were in the community, if you were in on the joke, you knew exactly what they were singing about. And for the first time, I guess you felt represented because straight people were singing it on the street without knowing what the hell YMCA was really about, right? These people, these young people who would gather at the YMCA found families in drag houses. They would find, yeah.
Before we go on, I just want to say that our special esteemed guest, Miss DeeDee Holliday, is on the stream. So we just want to say welcome to Now Open.
Welcome. Hello, hello.
Oh, you're muted, Miss DeeDee.
Hello, darlings.
Hello. Thank you so much for joining us.
Everyone's so gorgeous.
Pleasure.
I'm literally in pajamas, but
I'm so mad I don't have a fucking wig now.
Same, man. I'm in pambahay right
Who's wearing
now.
a wig?
It's awful.
No one's wearing a wig.
That's right. That's right. We're all natural. We're all natural.
Yes, ma'am. Oh, hey, beautiful
Okay, so-
mix, up and coming legendary superstar drag queen, super young. I hate you. What I'd give to have your age right now.
It's my pleasure to meet and communicate with the First Lady of Pasig City.
Oh, come on. Unofficial First Lady.
We're making it official. Officially.
As a Pasigueño.
As a Pasigueño.
Mhm.
Yeah. We love
Thank
to have
you. Thank you.
Okay, so
we
Miss
have
DeeDee, right
a-
before you came in, we were talking
Mhm.
about U.S. drag and how balls and the house system came about. So, Jobim, you want to take us down that line again?
Yeah, and drag houses found their surrogate families with the older drag queens who had paved the way in drag pageants. Originally, they were known as pageants, right? Eventually, pageants and balls came to be different things, even though at one point they were more or less the same. And the older drag queens, especially drag queens that were winning a lot of shows, started houses and took it upon themselves to take younger queens in to show them the ropes and to remind them that they are worth something. That even though the family that they were born into might not accept them, that the family that they chose always will. And that's I can't impress the importance of that. It is also during the 80s and 90s that drag gained prestige. You know, participating in drag really became something that people looked up to, that aspired to. There was a changing shift in the attitude towards drag. As Trisha and Presh and I watched yesterday, there was a drag was ever changing even back then, right? In the 60s, people were in the 90s, people were lamenting that before people used to make their own clothes, and then it became all about buying designer stuff, right? So there was a lot of change going on in drag in the 80s and 90s. But the biggest change of all, arguably, the shockwave that we are still feeling today, is that in 1993, a little somebody named RuPaul, you might have heard of him. RuPaul released Supermodel, Ya Better Work, right? And the effects it had on drag has had on modern culture since has been innumerable. And I think Trisha and our guests might be able to help better than I can with how drag has bled into modern society in ways that we might not even realize.
Again, I guess since we did give a bit of context with Madonna earlier, you have to remember that at that time, it was after the still ongoing onslaught of the AIDS pandemic. If any of you know the musical Rent, that was set around that time, actually, around the 90s, early 90s. And for a black man to be dressed in women's clothing, to hit mainstream television, MTV as it was starting out, for a black man in drag to be present on television for the whole world to see the impact that that had on the community, on the visibility of queer people, of drag queens in mainstream culture. That's really something that we can never discredit RuPaul from. Like that's something that we really do owe RuPaul and the producers of Supermodel and the artists behind all that entire body of work. That's something that the queer community owes to them, because that was really the first biggest break of the queer community in mainstream culture. We had Vogue, but Madonna was Vogue. Madonna was a white woman taking something from queer culture. This was queer culture on TV for the first time in like a good life.
So how about you, Miss DeeDee? What effects do you feel of, like, especially RuPaul coming out during that time, and like how the mainstreamization of drag has affected how we look at drag today?
Supermodels are basically goddesses for the gay community. And to have an actual gay man sing a supermodel song, that's like, oh, my existence is valid. If a black man, like what Mix said, if a black man can actually do it, a 6 foot tall black man, she's probably 6'5". How tall is she? Probably 6'5".
So so tall.
Yeah. If you can pull that off, then this young gay kid from the province who is so afraid to come out of the closet can actually do it too. Because the first time I've seen RuPaul is from the movie To Wong Fu, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar. Coming down that what do you call that? The strings from up there going down the stage wearing the it's a racist flag, right? What do you call it? The Confederate flag. She was wearing the Confederate flag. And that's a gay black man in drag wearing Confederate flag flying from up there going down. That's the first time I saw RuPaul. It's like, who is this creature? I want to be that creature. I'm gonna be that person someday. And look where I am now. I have 3 ingrate daughters who can't even say hi every day. Kidding. Of course I'm kidding. I love you. Hi Vinyas. Hi Gigi. Hi MC. I love the 3 of you. But yeah, so that's how RuPaul has impacted my life. I mean, before even Drag Race existed, there were these movies, and there was this song called Supermodel. No one can top that. And it being auto-tuned is just a minor detail.
And the
I'm
fracking is
kidding.
also a detail, but
Yeah, that's just a minor detail.
aside from the fracking and the
Oh
transphobia and the issues,
Yeah.
no, but you do have to give mad props to RuPaul for doing something like that.
Yes.
And by
And,
like
and
by like the late 90s, RuPaul was an absolutely a queer icon already.
exactly.
In mainstream media. Like, the first time I ever saw RuPaul was actually in the seminal lesbian film, But I'm a Cheerleader, which was released in the late 90s. And he appears there as an ex-gay. Like, it's a gay conversion camp, and RuPaul appears out of drag as an ex-gay, but is still totally, definitely very gay. And that was
Yes.
my first experience of RuPaul. And it was in a lesbian film in the late 90s. Like, already at that time, he was such an icon. And then, like, 10 years later, starts Drag Race. And now drag is taking over the world.
It has taken over the world, I think. Like, it's so surprising that even kids as young as 10 knows the names of these drag queens. I was like, do you know my name, kid? She doesn't. I'm not that popular yet, I guess. But these kids can name at least 10 drag queens on Drag Race, which is good. But please do not forget that you should be able to name local drag queens, because if you support Drag Race, there's no reason for you to not support your local drag queens.
Absolutely.
Very
And
well
in part two, after the break, we will be talking more about the Philippine drag scene. But before we go
yes.
into that, I want to promote this upcoming show. So, Cultural Learnings, an editorial platform for discussions on contemporary music curated by Psy, is featuring queer artists for Pride Month. Here's more on what's coming up from Psy herself. Take it away, Madam Producer.
Can I get on this vibe? Be a little faded, baby. No, it ain't no crime. Are we out of our minds? Dying in the moment just so we can feel alive. Why is this night so cold? This shit is getting old, but we still go with the flow. We spend some time away, but then I miss your face. I'll be pulling up my phone to say.
So, what you just heard was a clip from, is it WYD, What You Do? How do you pronounce this, Presh?
It's what you do. What you do. What you do.
Weird.
You text
So,
someone and you're horny. You're like, hey, babe, what you do? That's it.
So that was a clip from What You Do, an upcoming release from Rosa and Solana. If you want to hear the whole clip, plus a little something something, an interview with our very own producer Presh, make sure you tune into Cultural Learnings, which is happening tomorrow, 5 to 6 p.m. on Manila Community Radio. So, producer, why don't you give us a little bit on what Manila Community Radio is doing for this month?
Hello, now open. This is Versailles, and I run an editorial platform called Cultural Learnings, which is a newsletter and a weekly show on Manila Community Radio. In an effort to put a brighter spotlight on the LGBTQ community, I've been putting together a special Pride Month program across all of Cultural Learning's channels. I'm extending the invite to you all to please tune in to Precious takeover of my show on Manila Community Radio tomorrow, Wednesday, the 16th of June, between 5 to 6 p.m. Manila time. She'll be taking over the half-hour mark with a lot of unreleased tracks from her upcoming EP, and I'll be opening the first half hour with some of my own pop selections. So yeah, it's going to be a really nice show of pop, electronic, and acoustic music if you're into that. And even if you aren't into that, well, it's totally worth your shot. Never say never. Anyway, that's Wednesday, 16th of June, 5 to 6 p.m. on Manila Community Radio. Catch you in the airwaves. See ya.
All right. So if you're interested in that, I am leaving the links in the comments. So make sure to check that out. And seriously, Precious stuff that's coming out tomorrow is going to be excellent. So make sure you check that out. All right, so if you like what you hear and you want to support your beloved sexual delinquents, you can send us money like the whores we are. For less than the price of 1 cup of bougie coffee per month, you can keep your favorite sex podcast up and running for many episodes to come. It comes with a lot of goodies like extra content, special shoutouts, and exclusive access to a VIP customer channel on Discord. You can even suggest an episode. So it helps us a lot and we really appreciate it. Check the comments and the episode description for more information.
And now, back to the discussion. Okay, so drag history in the Philippines. We've talked about how drag evolved in the US, how modern drag originated from the US. But apparently, cross-dressing has been around for quite a while here in the Philippines. Cross-dressing has been a long-standing tradition here, and people like to reference our babaylans dressing in somewhat androgynous and feminine clothes. Another popular example of cross-dressing in the Philippines is Crispulo Pulong Luna, whose photos in dresses and kimonos survive to this day. But as we discussed earlier, since drag is a term that was coined in the late 19th century to describe male theater actors dressed as women, to just retroactively call any form of cross-dressing drag would be like calling the medieval practice of whipping a patient to cure them of their illness modern medicine. It is not drag in its modern form. We see evidence of modern drag in the Philippines during Japanese occupation, where Walter Dempster Jr., also known as Walterina Markova, was forced to be a comfort gay for Japanese soldiers. where he and several other drag queens were forced into labor and sexual abuse, along with comfort women by the Japanese. His story would be told in the 2000 film Markova, Comfort Gay, where he was portrayed by Dolphy, if I'm not mistaken.
Amazing film, by the way. And I was very proud of my high school, my all girls Catholic high school, showing us this film in high school to tell us both the realities of World War II and the realities of gay people at the time. So props to you, unnamed Catholic school.
Yeah, and the 60s and 70s brought widespread attention to drag when Ang Tatay Kong Nanay was released in 1978. So Dolphy has been instrumental, I think, in introducing drag to the mainstream, but as our guest Jason Tanliwag said in an earlier episode, it was also a double-edged sword. While it did bring arguably mainstream popularity, it also enforced and encouraged a lot of stereotypes that simply are not true. The character that was presented on screen was a caricature, albeit a caricature with humanity, because Dolphy can't do anything without like being human in it. But yeah, it helped and it hurt at the same time. And fast forward to today, where we're still experiencing, if you think about it, okay, where the Philippines is in terms of its relationship with drag is we're still in the 50s. We're still in the 1950s in America, where drag is a popular form of entertainment, where people are free to go to drag balls and celebrate drag. But God forbid we see it we see equality represented anywhere. People allowed to enjoy it as long as we're not reminded that you're around all the freaking time. It's a double standard here in the Philippines, and it's the same standard that was applied to drag queens in the 1950s in the US, which means we still have about, I don't know, like fucking 70 years of progress to go here in the Philippines. Good luck to us. So I'd like to thank our guests for being here today, because you can provide insight, far, far deeper and more meaningful insight, I think, than the three of us could on today's episode. How did you guys start with drag?
Well, I myself am I myself am a RuPaul's Drag Race baby. My first introduction into the drag as an art form, aside from getting glimpses of it on TV and on media as caricatures, my first experience with drag as an art form was via seeing clips on YouTube, and this was before Drag Race had really fully hit mainstream. So this around, I think, season 5. I was fresh out of high school. I saw this clip on YouTube and I was just like, I want to do that. At first, I was like a bit confused of, are they men? Are they women? Are they trying to be women? Or are they like, what are they? And then the more that I got into it, I started binge watching seasons of Drag Race, earlier seasons. And then drag has informed a lot of my artistic choices because it really resonated with me as a person. I love that whole aspect of full body, head to toe, one man production. And I carried that over in my studies in college. But it wasn't until last year that I started to fully take on and have a serious relationship with drag and try to start building a career and a name for myself.
And DeeDee?
I'm sorry, Joe. I'm being hypnotized by the way you talk. I'm so sorry. I don't mean to objectify you.
Oh, thank you.
You're so sexy when you talk.
It's true, though.
I should put on lipstick more
And
often.
people in the audience actually agree with me. Anyway, yeah, at the risk of revealing how old I am, yes. So my exposure to drag started before even Drag Race existed. So the first movie that I saw was Priscilla, Queen of the Desert.
Oh,
Oh,
amazing.
That's the first one I saw. And
I've heard
which is now a
comparisons
musical.
that Tu Wong Fu is just a poor man's
ripoff?
version of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. What do you have to say about that? You've seen both movies.
There are similarities. Definitely,
Mhm.
both are traveling from one place to another to get to. Yes, it is a ripoff. Okay.
You're still the better original.
Yeah. No, but both movies have their own good merits, their own they're all very influential to me. But what? So yeah, was exposed first. I was a kid. I'm not supposed to watch those films. I don't think they're rated for someone as young as 5. So I was 5 years old and I'm already watching those movies. So it greatly affected the way I perceive things. I always want to look for glitter, glamour, hair, high heels. So I started trying on my mom's outfit and heels and makeup. Every time she would go to the beautician, I would try to imitate it once she's gone, and then I would use her makeup and try to apply it on myself. So, and that was before YouTube. There were no tutorials. My only references were magazines, you know, in bed, looking under the light, looking for like models, because there were very few drag queens on magazines at that time. Oh my God! You all have an idea how old I am, though.
I have been following you,
But
Miss
yeah,
DeeDee, for a very long time now.
thank you. Very long time sounds like an insult. Was that a read? Was that a
No,
read?
I love you so much. You are so established in this scene.
I have been your
Thank
fan for the
you.
appropriate amount of time.
Yeah, because I'm
I'm pretty
also
sure you don't remember, but the
so
first time.
okay. Look, if I've been following you for a long time, it's a read on me too because today's my birthday. So
Mhm.
Yes, I'm gonna read you.
you're aging with
Happy
me.
birthday, darling.
I have to
Thank
ask because most of the media that we get about the drag community comes from abroad, right? We don't, as prominent as drag culture here is in the Philippines, you don't see a lot of it on mainstream media, at least not being handled well. How
All right.
is drag different in the US from drag here?
Okay, so I'm gonna answer that first before mix. Okay, do you mind?
Yeah, no.
Okay. Um, in 2009, when I started doing drag in the Philippines, nobody knows what drag queens are. People still call us impersonators. And I hate that. I'm not impersonating nobody. I mean, who am I impersonating right now? Nobody. So I started calling myself as a drag queen. That's how I branded myself on social media. And social media was also fairly new at the time. I think Facebook was just 2 years old.
Mhm.
Twitter, I think, wasn't even born yet. I'm not sure. Um, Oh, probably it's already there. And when people ask what I do for a living or what kind of entertainer I am, they refer to me as an impersonator, and that's just not right. I'm sure I do impersonation because impersonation is just an aspect of drag, but that's not what drag is all about. Okay, there's uh, if you have too much sense of style, too much sense of fashion, you
Too
should
much
know who
sense.
said that. Yes, then you call yourself a drag queen. Okay, I mean, what I don't impersonate anyone by wearing this really big hair. Sure, there are influences, but stop calling us impersonators or comedians. Because I still get referred to as a comedian, and they would ask me, "Do you work in a comedy bar?" Well, no, I'm not even funny. Fuck you. Oh, can I say that? I already said it. I'm so
Absolutely.
sorry.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah, how different is it? Yeah, because the ball culture in the US is so much different because the only thing that's actually similar to the ball culture that we have are the gay pageants that we had in the 90s. And the US also has that beauty pageants for gay, but they have a separate ball scene, and we don't necessarily have that here. I think that's something that would have helped if we had that. So the main difference actually is how people perceive us. Because in the US, people really see it as a profession. In here, a lot of people would judge you as someone who just had nothing better to do with your life, admittedly. And we want to break that stereotype. Some of us do this for a living. I have friends who were able to send their siblings to school by performing. I know someone who actually has actual kids and is a performer. I used to work with one, like biological kids of his own or her own, or their own. I'm not sure. No, because I haven't been in touch with Mama Donna. Her name is Donna. She's one of the early impersonators in bars in Malate before. And surprisingly, Mama Donna actually has a son who is now 21 years old, and he was able to send him to school by performing. So how dare you call us as people who just have nothing better to do with our lives when some of us are just actually trying to make a living? This is a profession for us. Okay. How dare you? And don't say that to my face because you will not see what's coming to you if you ever say that to my face. Yes, I'm threatening you. I'm kidding.
As you should.
The last
I
thing to
think
go
I
through your
woke up
mind will
today
be
and
Dee Dee's
chose
slippers.
violence. Why did I choose violence today? I'm so sorry. I'm not usually like this.
And Mix, what about you? What do you think are the observations that you noticed, the differences between drag in the US and drag here?
That is very true. That the U.S. system of drag came from kind of like an actual system. So it came from, um, since we talked about Crystal LeBeige earlier. Crystal LeBeige
Yeah.
was the most iconic person to leave the pageant system because of its racism and built the ball scene and built the house system. Because they had that whole gay and trans pageants, and then eventually they had the whole ball culture, and um, it throughout the years it became more revolutionized, more mainstream. That now we have a show about the whole ball culture pose, but here in the Philippines, it kind of was a bit more of a grassroots level. Um, Aside from the caricatures we have on TV based off of the acts in the Miss Gay Barangay pageants, I think largely what drag was in the Philippines for a long time was the Miss Gay Barangay, because it was in the Philippines the acts are less serious. They weren't about like looking polished. They weren't about being the most beautiful, the most fish, the best dancer, the best singer. They really came from wanting to as a form of entertainment. So a lot of the novelty acts that you still see in a lot of shows sometimes have been passed on from acts in Miss Gay Barangays from years ago, and this is from what I know, and also just the entertainers that have paved the way for young queens like me that have worked in the bar since the days of Palawan and P2.
Is
Were you
there
even old enough to know those places? I'm so sorry, Mix. I don't think you were old enough.
I have only heard of them.
You never heard of them. I
I
lived
I,
there.
I,
Oh my
Okay.
god.
I'm not old enough to actually have experienced those places.
Oh my
the look
god.
Dee Dee has on her face is like, you're so young. I want to reach across the screen and slap you in the face.
Yeah.
Miss DeeDee, I'm pretty sure you don't remember, but I met you a few years ago, and it was my first time at O-Bar. I went there for the Adore Delano, when
You
she
were
went.
there. I hosted.
Yes, that was me. So that was the
When
first time I met you,
we
and
met. You were
yes, that was
probably like a little gay kid, very scrawny, skinny.
A baby
yes,
gay.
blue hair still even at that time. And I met you, and that was my first time. That was my first time at an actual full-on drag show. I had seen drag acts. I had seen it from like barangay events, some guestings. That was the that was my first time seeing in full swing the Filipino drag scene at Obar.
Also, I'm the first actual drag queen on stage that you saw because I opened that show.
Yes, and you were the first one that I ever talked to.
So, oh, really? Oh, was I nice? Was I
Yes,
nice?
you were. You were very
Okay,
nice.
okay. I was. Okay. Cool. Thank
Full
you.
circle. We love it. I gotta ask,
Yes, and
is
look at you
there
now.
a hierarchy or a system in the Philippines? Because in the US they have drag mothers, they have houses. Is there anything resembling that here in the Philippines, or is there a hierarchy among performers that is mutually understood?
Good question. Okay, I'm gonna answer that again. So when I got into the scene, I didn't know anybody. I was actually a stranger to anyone because I did not belong to any group. When I auditioned in 2009, so yeah, I was good enough to get a gig and got offered a schedule at O Bar in Ortigas. And that's how I found out that there are these groups called the Raging Divas, the Lola Divas, the those queens. There are so many groups, and I was from the corporate industry trying to break into the drag scene. I don't know anyone. So I was doing any song that I wanted, and apparently I was angering some established queens because apparently those are their songs.
Ooh.
And before I can actually do those songs, I need to ask for their permission. Well, I don't even know them. That's how I found out. So the hierarchy you're talking about actually is very much alive. We call them ñoras, short for señoras. So someone talked to me and told me now you have to be respectful to the ñoras, and if that is their signature song, you cannot just do it without their permission, as if they're actually Jessie J or Mariah or whoever.
You have to pay them royalties if you want to sing their
I
song.
know something like that. You have
So
to
what
pay
was
them
your
respect, but
what was your reaction as a young drag queen who, as you said, was not affiliated with anyone, who didn't know anyone? For these older people to come at you and be like, you can't do that. Did you choose to pay respect, or did you like fuck them? What was your reaction?
fuck them.
Yes.
Hey, honey, if I were a very goody two shoes queen back then, I wouldn't have lasted this long in the industry, and I wouldn't have been able to probably have drag children.
Mhm.
I mean, come on, I have Gigi, Venus Deluxe, MC Black D as my drag children. That is something, right? Right? I mean, in this industry, it's very cutthroat, and people would tell you that you have an attitude, but as long as you're doing it right, and if you're doing a song that's a signature of someone more established than you, then try to do it better.
Ah! You know
I
what?
love
That is
it.
absolutely true,
I
though.
love it.
We also had this kind of like same setup in burlesque, where, to be fair, at the time it was just really us doing burlesque. So if you wanted to do a song, you couldn't do a song that somebody else had already done. But then sometimes the good songs get taken and you want to use them, and it's unfortunate, but that's just how it is. But we were operating on a one troop mindset. We were the only people doing this. But with the drag scene now, it's so varied. Do we have rivalries now
I mean,
in the drag scene?
Are
I'd
Is
there
like
is
house
there,
Mix
rivalries?
is there beef?
I'd like
Beef
Mix to
between
answer
houses?
that. And Mix, do you have any experience with the seniority thing as well? Because I'm very curious.
I think, well, in a sense, yes. I do
We
know
need
that.
names. We need names.
I'm not
Let's
gonna
see
start
all-
any beef and
Damayan na.
share. No, in a sense, yeah, yes, I do know to pay respect to my seniors, and I do know that a lot of them have signature songs, but I guess because I came from a very, in a way, uncharted territory in terms of starting out as a drag queen here in the Philippines, since I started out online. I My first event as a bringing myself out to the drag world was via Zoom. So, and then my first like real experience with working with real queens was with Spaces Manila Spotlight, where we were being mentored. So they were already giving us songs that were done by queens time and again to do our own versions of. So I didn't experience much of that. Okay, this is their song, you can't do that. But I do know that there is more of a premium, especially in terms of like talent fees and stuff like that. The Nyoras get a bigger cut, get a bigger fee, and that's fine.
Who's that? What bigger fee? No, I'm kidding.
I have a question. Did you have any reservations when you wanted to put when you wanted to put yourself out there doing drag? And how did you get over those reservations?
Well, when I did it, not really, because I had already been thirsting to put myself out in drag for 7 years before I actually did it the first time. I've been wanting to be a fully fledged queen for 7 years. So at that point, I was just like, I'm gonna do this. Nobody's gonna stop me. I'm gonna do what I want.
All right.
Awesome. How
How?
about you, Didi?
Yeah.
Reservations? Me? None. Because you can't be a drag queen and have reservations. You can't be a drag queen just 90%, not even 99. You have to do it 300% or more. There's just so much commitment to doing drag because it's not just actually head to toe. It goes beyond that. You take care of your music, you take care of your lights, you take care of your blocking on stage. And sometimes you have to take care of the food of your backup dancers.
Right.
It goes beyond just yourself. So there are no reservations to being a drag queen.
So,
Fuck the
can I
system.
ask
Just do what you
if
want. Sure.
if there's somebody out there that wants to get into this and they feel pressured, I suppose, or like they feel some reservations for it, what would you say to them?
Bitch, just do it. Come on. There's no right time. There's no right time to do it except now. You know. Just do it. It's just like getting a vaccine. Do it now. If it's offered to you, you have the opportunity. Do it. Get
Speaking
vaccinated.
speaking of the vaccine, I wanted to ask, how different is drag now in the pandemic? I can only imagine that drag is evolving because drag's not gonna stop. Drag's not gonna stop just because people have stayed home, as we've seen. But how is it different now that you're not going out to do shows as often? That you're not making live appearances as often? How is What are the differences that you've noticed in the year that we have been locked down?
Mix. You first.
I think I think it's kind of starting. The battlefield is kind of starting to even out because it's starting to not matter as much how much experience you have, but as long as the people are enjoying what you put out. Because even the nyoras, the mamas, the ates, they're still figuring this out. They're still figuring out the online landscape. So we all are. We're all kind of learning as we go along. We're learning from each other. So it's kind of anyone's game right now. I mean, of course, there's still, you for me, I still really respect the people that have been doing this for longer than I have. I look up to them so much, but at the same time, it's like I there's not much of that mindset for me to be like, okay, I'm a tiny small queen waiting for my artist permissions to get my big break. No, I have to work hard for it.
Mhm.
I have to do my own thing. I have to work real hard. I have to grab the opportunities that I can get to be my own performer in this online scene, and then hope to God that it translates outside. It
Would
translates
you
when
say
things start to normalize.
would you say that the pandemic and the fact that it's brought everything online has been somewhat of an equalizer for younger queens to get noticed?
A little bit, of course.
It's not a
Of
little
DeeDee
course,
says
bit,
not a little
darling.
bit.
Let me just say it. It's not a little bit. It is a great equalizer. It
We
is.
actually have a comment here from a customer, Chai. Hello, Chai. They say, ironically, this pandemic blessed me to get to know these queens on a deeper level. So it seems like the people who are viewing the art that you're producing feel like they get to know you because you're not hyper produced on a stage. You're not doing a performance that's 3 minutes long with your music and your lighting and your makeup and your outfit. You're doing this from the comforts of your own home, which is a very personal space. So you're able to be more vulnerable, perhaps,
Mhm.
or they just see you in a more human light because you're not hyper produced. So
Mhm.
that's what I'm getting from Chai's message here.
I think it's also because online drag queens have gone from being performers to kind of being a level of influencer.
Oh.
a level
Yeah.
of personality, because suddenly everyone's a host. Suddenly everyone has to host their own Facebook live shows. When before there was a main host, and then they perform. You wait for your number, do your number, wait for your next one, change your costume, do your number, and now it's like you're standing in front of a camera talking to so many people all at once, and you have to show you. There's no way you can't hide who you are. You can't hide your personality when you're doing that.
So we,
That
we,
is
we
so
discussed
true.
we discussed earlier how drag began as a form of rebellion, and that's never gone away. That undercurrent of, it's a wink and a middle finger. How do we make sure that drag stays meaningful today? And I don't think it's ridiculous to think that some of the meaning might be getting lost, especially in a society where we value looks so much, where we value spectacle so much, where things are always being done as a form of virtue signaling. How do we prevent something as meaningful as drag from getting lost in all of that?
Okay. Personally, I am an advocate of equality. Yay! I fight for rights. I mean, I always incorporate deep messages into my performances, even single photos. One of my latest photos is me riding a horse with the pride flag and the Philippine flag for Independence Day. So it's not just drag, it's something to show my patriotism and something that things that I am actually passionate about, which is equal rights for everyone. And the last TV show that I was part of, my last song that I performed, I wrote words on my body. Yes, those words that were used to ostracize me, and I perform with those words on my body. So if I can do something more meaningful, I mean, I don't do that all the time, but I do it from time to time just to make sure that my drag stays political because I'm a very political queen.
For me, I feel very much the same way. I feel very much that drag isn't just about being pretty. Drag isn't just about high energy dancing. Drag is about expressing who you are. As an artist, you are a drag artist, and as an artist by nature, you are expressing yourself. And by expressing yourself, you're expressing your thoughts, your perceptions. There is no way for you to take that away from your drag. Whether it be, whether you be an impersonator, someone that does celebrity impersonations, whether you do more of like a female illusion, you are an artist. Your drag is you. Your drag represents how you see the world and how you see yourself and how you want the world to see you. So if you are someone with a message, if you are someone with a statement, that's going to come out. It's not something you can stop, and it's not something that you should be afraid of.
With that, I want to ask you, Jobim, how does
Mhm.
it feel to be in drag for the first time?
I love it. It's very comfortable.
Wait, you've been in
I
drag?
yes,
He's in makeup and a dress right now.
yeah.
No wig.
This is a dress. I'm in a dress. Yes. Yeah. This is a. I borrowed my girlfriend's jewelry. I am in a dress. I am wearing makeup. I know it's not. It doesn't look great, but I don't have a wig. Yeah.
How does
Oh,
it
Uh,
feel for
Henny.
you, though,
an
to be
attempt
in drag
was
right now?
made. Uh, it feels great. I mean, I am not uncomfortable if that's what you're asking.
Do you
It
like it
feels nice,
though?
man. Oh yeah, absolutely. I don't know how many times I remark to my girlfriend in the week how I wish that women's clothes were made for men because they look comfy as fuck, and I would love to go out. Have you seen Dan Levy in a skirt attending like red carpet shows? I wish. Yeah, but yeah, I'm still looking though. I mean, I've talked to Janine about like, would you be cool with me going out in a skirt? She was like, yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
But
good
yeah,
Men's
to know.
clothes can be as comfortable or as painful as you want them or as the manufacturers make them to be. So why choose either one?
actually, I'm just
Exactly.
looking for one that fits
Good
me well because I
point.
have no butt. So
Okay,
It's hard
so
for me to
babe,
find things.
if I can find clothes for myself as a woman with no butt and large feet, we can find you something.
Right. Let's do it. I just want to get to some of the comments from our listeners today. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. We got a lot of birthday greetings, Patricia. Rod says, happy birthday, Trisha. Meryl says, happy birthday, Trisha. Abigail. Lexi says, proud daughter and sister of Mick Chanel right here. We have a lot of
Hi.
support also coming in for Mix, coming from Gion Rosette, who says Mix Chanel stands rise up. Okay, I think we had a question here earlier. Yeah, from Mark Clayton. Mark Clayton asks, due to COVID and many people not going into an office for work, cosmetic sales are down 50%. People of drag also have been able to get out so much. Are people of drag buying less makeup in these times?
Well, frankly, yes. Because not everyone can continue to afford how much makeup they used to buy. Because a lot of queens still are jobless. A lot of queens still are just finding ways to cope financially in this pandemic with our government not giving a fuck about the nightlife industry. Some queens that used to buy loads and loads of makeup have to just buy makeup when they need to replace a foundation bottle that ran out.
True. True. So, but just to say it out loud, you can never have too much makeup. There's no such thing as too much makeup. Okay.
Very true. Very
But
true.
well, technically though, if you've been in the industry long enough, you actually stop buying makeup already because people and fans actually start giving them to you. I guess I was fortunate enough to experience that. But it stopped too when the pandemic happened. So that's when I actually started buying my own makeup during the pandemic. But ironically, before the pandemic, I wasn't buying makeup anymore. Only the ones that I really like because they come from makeup artists who are so fond of drag queens. The hand-me-downs. I like hand-me-downs, especially if they're from MAC or Bobby Brown. Thank you, Byron, by the way. But during the pandemic, yes, definitely my friends, my other sisters told me that they stopped uh, buying the high-end makeup because on camera, doing on Zoom, Facebook Live, they look the same as just a drugstore makeup versus on stage when you're
Ah,
performing live. Yes. I don't know
okay.
if that's true, but
Interesting.
I
Thank you
still use
for
my branded ones.
Thanks for answering Mark's question. We have a bunch of people saying that they just miss live drag shows, man. Brian says there was never an O-Bar night that me and my friends didn't finish all 3 sets of shows. I super miss live drag. Rosette says drag will always be political. Right on. Chai says you are going against a supposed norm, and you're doing it fantastically. Thank you, Queens. And on behalf of everyone here from Now Open, thank you so much for joining us tonight and shedding some light on the world of drag for all of us plebes. And that was it for our episode on the herstory of drag. Trisha, Presh, anything that you guys wanna say? Any takeaways from tonight's episode?
I'll go first. My major takeaway is support your local drag queens.
Yes,
If
yes,
you
yes.
love Drag Race, if you love Legendary, if you love Pose, and you love fashion,
Mm-hmm.
and you love comedy and performance, just support your local drag queens because honestly, the drag queens we have here, they're fucking incredible. They're amazing. I've had the honor of seeing them live before this awful pandemic took away everything that was beautiful from us. They're incredible and they're brave and they're beautiful and they're talented. So give them your money. That's all I got.
Yes,
Give
please. Give us
them
your
your
money.
money. Send them
I
on
love money.
Gcash. Watch their shows.
Or secondhand makeup, apparently. Either
Or
will do.
Yeah.
secondhand makeup. Just do your thing. Support your local drag queens however you can, because as much as you love the ones who are abroad, and they're incredible as well, we have people back home who are struggling now because of the pandemic, and they're just as worthy, if not more, in so many cases.
Mm-hmm.
You are an incredible inspiration. I'm sorry, I just have to say that. Like, as a person who goes to Nectar all the time, mostly for the lesbian night, but occasionally
Girl
during
Nation.
the non during the regular nights, you have been an amazing inspiration, and drag has encouraged so many people to explore their sexuality and their gender expression in so many different ways, and I cannot understate the impact that drag has had on my life. So I really thank all the people who are out there doing it. And Joe Bim for being here in drag for the first time. It's such an honor to have you in drag for the first time.
I don't feel right saying that I am in drag when I'm next to these two beautiful women who are clearly resplendent in what they are wearing, and I'm hearing this like poor excuse of a like. Hi.
Everyone starts somewhere, Joe
I
Bim,
guess
and
yeah.
if you let me pluck your eyebrows, we can do something better next time.
You know what? I'll let you
Whose
glue
dress
them
are you
over.
wearing?
This is my
Whose
girlfriend's
dress are you wearing? Okay, cool.
The miracle
You want me to-
that glue stick and pressed powder can do for your face. It's
Yeah.
something that you should experience.
I should probably take off my pants just to it's a dress.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, please.
There you
Yes,
go.
please.
It's a dress now.
Show us your legs, Joe Bim.
Wait, I can't
Come on,
pull the dress
lad.
up too. I can't pull the dress up too high because I'm not wearing any underwear. So
Wait.
just
But did you talk though?
there you
Did you talk
There's no
though?
tucking there.
wait.
There's no talk.
All right, I'm tucked now.
Ladies and gentlemen, you have
Next
just
time I
seen
come over
live
there,
from-
Jabem, I'm gonna bring some duct tape. We're gonna tuck you properly.
Wait, fuck no! Now I can't sit down, otherwise I sit on my balls. Wait, oh. How do you do this? How do you do this?
I love how he says that with so much dread when I do that all the time.
Ah!
Jabem, you're weak shit.
I can feel the tip of my dick kissing my asshole right now. It's stuck so far back. Anyway, so
Is that a flex?
okay, so we have Presh, did you have your final thoughts?
Right. For me, because I'm a creator myself, and drag is an art form, right? And when I asked those questions, I feel like I was projecting, right? Because I wanted to know what you guys thought about, putting yourself out there. And honestly, just do it. This is me. And if you don't like it, I don't give a shit. This is me. Just do it. And I feel like having reservations with doing something that you wanna fucking do, just get rid of them. Just find a way. Just fucking do it. That's it. Just do it now and be you now and show the world who you are right now. And I feel like that's so powerful. And that's what has been driving not only the drag community, but just like art in general, right? Like we're gonna get judged anyway.
Look at
people
what
are
you've
gonna.
done. You've empowered Presh. Lolook at what you've done
I
to
know.
her.
It's
I have never
unstoppable.
seen her. This is like she's drank 4 cups of coffee. I've never seen her like this before.
Yeah, just fucking do it, man. Just do it. Don't give a shit. Like whatever insecurities you're feeling, just go fucking do it. That's it. And I feel like that's so powerful to me. So thank you.
Amazing. My takeaway is that unless you've been living under a rock and you are not somehow enjoying the fruits that drag has brought us over the years, then you owe it to yourself and to the community that has given us so much to get to know more about what it's about, where it's from, and to get yourself more involved. Because like we said, there's so many elements of drag that have bled into modern life today. The words we use, the way we dress, the TV shows we watch, and we all have drag to thank for those things. So we owe it, not just to ourselves, but to them as well, to remember and celebrate where all the things that we enjoy come from. That was it for our episode on the herstory of drag. Before we say goodbye, let's open up the floor to questions from our customers for today's opening up. Do we have an anonymous letter?
Yes, we absolutely
Oh, awesome.
do.
Great.
So our
anonymous,
anonymous.
right?
By the way, this is totally open to both of our guests. Please answer this. Our anonymous letter writer writes, Is it okay to still have sexual relationship with your ex? Precious
I feel like
screaming.
I feel like we've answered this in a past episode, and I believe the answer that we universally landed on was stop going back to fuck your ex, you stupid horny piece of shit.
Don't do it.
Stop
Just
doing
don't
it.
do it. Just
God
don't do it.
damn it.
There's so much like bigger pussy out there. Just don't do it.
Kung
man.
hindi ka ba naman tangat kalahati, stop going back to your fucking ex.
I want to ask our guests though, what do you think about this question, and what would your answer be?
Me first. Me. I'm gonna answer that. Okay. My response to that always is a question. Well, which ex are we talking about?
Good
It's always
question.
which,
Exactly.
because I have ex-boyfriends who are still very sexy that I would still bang any time of the day. With, of course, no strings attached anymore because I move on easily. That's the kind of bitch that I am. So I can handle that. Sex with my ex, that's fine. Especially if they're available and I'm available, and I just think it's hot. But if you're marupok, don't do that, okay? Wag
Yeah.
tatanga-tanga.
If you're a bottom and a simp.
Yeah, if you're marupok, no, 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 no.
What about you, Mick Chanel? What do you
Very
think?
similar answer, contrary to popular belief. As long as boundaries are clear, as long as baggage has been disposed of, why the fuck not? Your
It's just
bodies
that.
are already familiar with each other.
Oh yes,
As,
ma'am.
as long as boundaries are clear, as long as you're not marupok, as long as no strings attached, as long as it's all laid out clear that it's just going to be a physical relationship, why not? Why not? I have a few exes I would still sleep with.
And that is the
Completely
follow-up
platonic.
question. Is there an ex that you would still sleep with?
On that note, I think
Oh,
everybody has an
actually-
ex they'd still fuck. You know what I mean? Just I,
Yeah, you
my, I
said
think
that.
my I think my point of view is if you are relentless in the pursuit of new sexual experiences, then why would you go back to what's already there? Nandiyan na eh. Madali na
it's
yan
so
eh.
good, man.
No,
But if
it's
it's
great.
right, it's
What if
right.
it's great?
Because
You know what?
sometimes it's good shit.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's also good shit from someone who hadn't broken me. You know what I mean? Like,
if
why
that's
am I
why
going
it's hot?
to pleasure you?
What if that is why it's hot, man? They've broken
Bakit
you and
kita
you want to fuck
bibigyan?
them.
All right. I guess.
The sex is great. Okay, I can do just if the sex is great. Who am I to say no to that?
All right, there you go, anonymous. We hope we have made your next regrettable decision. Thank you so much for sending us that question. If you'd like to send us your anonymous questions or confessions, you can submit through our opening up form. And DeeDee, Mix, thank you so much for being on the show tonight. Would you like to promote anything?
Well, first of all, as we had discussed in this episode of Drag Herstory, Black, Indigenous, feminine people of color have been at the forefront of this fight longer than you or your parents have been alive. Respect them. Respect femininity. It does not make you any less of a person. And now that we're in the pandemic, there is no excuse to support your local queens. They're everywhere. They're on Facebook, they're on Twitter Spaces, they're on live streaming apps. The money is so much easier. Gcash them, online bank transfer, PayPal. There's no excuse to not support your local queens. They're everywhere. In this pandemic, they are the most accessible they've ever been. So if you have money in your online wallet, you're not even gonna feel like you're losing money because you're not even touching it. Just send it. Give us your money. Thank you.
Hashtag send it.
How about you, Miss DeeDee?
Okay, but yes, please support your local drag queens. I don't do online shows anymore. because I gave that to my sister. Less competition, sure, but I focused on private corporate gigs. That's where I get most of my dough right now. But my message right now is for those young kids who still don't understand what they're going through, and if they that those who are interested in exploring the world of drag, it's okay to do that. You can express yourself creatively, and you are valid. Do and follow your heart. It's very important because if you want to look and feel as fabulous as we are, the time is now. Okay?
Fresh, you say
How
something?
about,
And you are
yes,
Levio.
Presh? You want to promote anything?
Oh,
Well,
shit! Can I promote something?
Yes,
Sorry, I forgot.
absolutely. Let's promote your things.
Yeah, yes. I have an upcoming upcoming gig with Spaces Manila. I'll be hosting the RuPaul's Drag Race All Stars viewing party. So I'll be hosting that. It's gonna happen every new episode drops. Okay, so wait for posters to come out. So that's on Spaces Manila. Yeah, I'm so excited.
awesome.
As for me, I'm online, mix.chanel, both on Instagram and on Kumu. I'm on Kumu hanging out, sometimes just like at work, doing work. Sometimes I have shows with my sisters also on Kumu. I'm also with Spaces Manila. So season 3 of Queen's Night is coming out. That's your Saturday evening drag show where you can see more than one a group of drag performance, and we are moving to a hybrid setting as well, so that's an exciting venture. It's drag season, drag queens are everywhere, support them, follow them, just enjoy it and enjoy drag.
Fresh?
How about our lovely hosts, Presh?
Ako palagi. Just for me, like support local artists. Drag is also an art form, and yeah, give them your money, man, but also give me your money, please. And yeah, just the our radio, my what do you call that? Size radio show, which is coming up tomorrow. Cultural learnings on Manila Community Radio. I prepared for that shit, man. I did sleep for 2 days for that, man. Let's go. Let's listen to it. Yeah, you can catch that on manilacommunityradio.com, I believe. So yeah, that's it. Check it out.
Awesome. I would like to promote using exact change when buying small items, especially at the grocery store. But I am also on Twitter under Jobimism. That's Jobimism, and Jobim Javier on Instagram. I'm not sure if I still have a radio show on Jam 88.3. You're just gonna have to tune in and find out whether I'm there for the day. Who knows?
Along
Uh,
with you. We're
yeah,
with you on that journey.
yeah. Trisha?
My takeaway for tonight is that drag is fucking incredible. It's transformative, it's meaningful, it's political, it's revolutionary, and it can help you find the person within you that you're comfortable with. You know, like whether you're cisgender, transgender, gay, straight, there is always something to be learned from drag. So give it a shot. Try it once in your life, like Joe Bomb has done here so graciously
Yay.
for this evening. And I hope that I will see more of Joe Bomb on this show.
You know, I
Does
didn't even have
Shobam
to
have drag
fucking.
name? Do you have
I
a
didn't
drag
have.
name already?
That was it. That was my
It's
real
Joe
name is
Bomb.
Jobim. Check
Oh,
it out.
oh,
Look,
that's a drag
I
name.
didn't have to fucking tape shit. Look at this. Look. Bam.
You got
Uh-huh.
cleavage.
Oh yeah.
I'll
Jenny
buy
was
you
like, "Do
a
you want me to?"
bra.
Jenny was like, "Do you want me to contour in your cleavage?" And I was like, "Bitch, what? What contour? What? What do you need to contour here?"
Okay, okay, okay.
They're bigger than mine, I swear to God. Fuck you.
You gotta
So
squeeze them together like that.
So make sure to support your local drag queens because they're providing an immense service, entertainment during this time. During a pandemic, they are braving death and and pessimism at every angle with their amazing performances. So please support your local drag queens and follow me on Twitter at Trisha O'Bannon. That's about it I have for my
All right.
personal promotions. But don't forget to stay updated with Now Open by following us on Facebook and Twitter. We are at Now Open PH. Our past episodes are also available on YouTube, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts, especially now that we have a network contract, baby.
We got picked up.
We got picked up.
Don't forget to join our Discord server to hang out with the hosts, fans, and friends of Now Open, and subscribe to our coffee page. That's www.co.fi.com/NowOpenPH to get bonus content and other special perks.
So, continuing with our Pride Month series, we are so excited to announce next week's episode. So, if you tune in same time, same place, next Tuesday, you will get an amazing episode on bisexuality.
Oh,
There we go.
Yes.
So, if you
Very
want to
important.
learn about the proud bisexuals that run this show, and the bisexuals who have paved the way for the rest of us and what the issues that the bisexual community is facing today, make sure to tune in next week, Tuesday, 9 p.m. on Facebook. See you when we next open.